It's the simple things in life, all the little moments that together add up to something spectacular. Slumberland, it's a good life.
College Game Time has moved to Thursdays. Stay up to date with marquee matchups from around the country. Host Kenitra Williams and the experts preview and review the big games.
109, 106 in triple overtime.
Get an inside peek at the nation's top athletes and coaches. And we'll spotlight the hottest teams from coast to coast. College Game Time. Now Thursdays at 5:30. Only on Time Warner Cable Sports Channel. This winter on Time Warner Cable Sports Channel and Nebraska On Demand. Nebraska men's and women's basketball. Coaches Tim Miles and Connie York are looking to take their teams back to the NCAA tournament. Time Warner Cable will take you through all of the Big Ten play and the postseason. Time Warner Cable is your home for full interviews, highlights, and the season in review show. Husker Hoops on Time Warner Cable Sports Channel and Nebraska On Demand. The confetti has settled and a brand new season is on deck.
It's unbelievable what they did!
Your World Series champion Royals now begin their defense of that crown. We'll start getting you ready for spring training as our experts begin to break down the 2016 Royals and what they need to do to repeat as World Series champs. It's an all-new season of Blue Zone. Monday nights at 6:30, only on Time Warner Cable Sports Channel.
The 2016 National Signing Day is in the books, and the Nebraska Cornhuskers have locked up some top recruits from across the country, creating an exciting future for the Big Red. Get to know the newest members of the football squad coming up next on Time Warner Cable Sports Channel. Welcome to the 2016 Husker Football Recruiting Show on Time Warner Cable Sports Channel. I'm Megan Scolio. Nebraska head coach Mike Riley and his crew have a full year under their belts at Nebraska, and now they're locking up some big prospects across the country to start off year number 2. Over the next hour, we'll take a look at each member of the 2016 class. And joining me today to discuss the commits is Husker Online's Sean Callahan. Sean, thanks for being here.
Hey, it's great to be here. Thanks, Megan.
Well, let's get started with the offense. Patrick O'Brien, a 4-star quarterback from California and probably the most talked about commit. He's the perfect fit for a pro-style offense, mainly taking snaps shotgun or under center. How's his ability to throw on the run?
Well, he's definitely a mobile quarterback. Kind of reminds me almost of a Ben Roethlisberger. He's big, he's strong at 6'4", close to 230 or more pounds. Has a very strong arm, though, to make the throws that you need in this offense, and he's very polished. And I think that's one of the things about Mike Riley. His ability to identify quarterbacks over the years has been one of his strengths as a coach, and you saw that with the recruitment of O'Brien. When he was coming up, he was somewhat under the radar, and once Nebraska got on him, you saw his stock just continue to go up and up and up, and I'm excited to see what he can do. He completed over 70% of his passes, had a great senior year, and most importantly, he's here right now for spring practice.
And how do those 15 extra practices benefit him heading into the fall?
Well, you really can't put into words how valuable it's going to be. I don't think he's necessarily going to win the starting job as a freshman, but just being here under Tommy Armstrong, learning the system, getting comfortable with Lincoln, with classes, with the campus, and the teammates, it's going to go a long way in his long-term overall development.
And he had a personal quarterbacks coach, Steve Calhoun, who really helped him with his footwork. What can you say about his overall technique?
Well, it's funny. I mean, every quarterback in California has a personal quarterback coach. It's kind of the long-running joke, and I think that's what separates guys like Patrick O'Brien from the quarterbacks, say, here in Nebraska. They are just so polished because these kids, they work at it, and they have high-level NFL caliber instructors, guys that train the pro prospects, even for the NFL Combine, that work with these high school kids on a regular basis, and that's what you see in Patrick. I mean, he really is so far advanced with some of his things with footwork and throwing technique, and I know once he gets here with Danny Langsdorff and Mike Riley, those things are only going to get better.
Trey Bryant, a 3-star running back from St. Louis, his high school coach expressed the importance of pass blocking. How important is that to stress to running backs before they get to the collegiate level?
Well, it is something that's really important, and very few running backs in the high school level have to pass block. I mean, usually they're the star player on their team, and you don't really need to do it. And I think that's what keeps guys maybe from getting on the field as true freshmen. We saw that a little bit this past year. Divine Ozigbo was very talented, but I think there was some times where he needed to learn some of the pass pro and pass protection, because particularly in these pro-style systems, if you can't pass block, you can't be on the field because you're going to put your quarterback in a tough situation.
And he's currently the size of Amir Abdullah when Amir was a senior here. What similarities do you see between the two?
Well, he's very explosive, arguably the best running back in Missouri, and I think the best football player in St. Louis this year. But just his knack for the big play and his vision, he's somebody that can do a lot of things when he gets the football in his hands, just like Amir Abdullah did.
J.D. Spielman, a three-star athlete from Minnesota. His dad's the general manager of the Vikings. He's been around football his whole life. Listed as an athlete, sounds like he'll be playing receiver, specifically where Westerkamp and Turner play. How do you see him fitting in that role?
Well, I think the area he could have maybe the most immediate early impact is in special teams. He's a phenomenal kick returner. We know DeMornay Pearsonell's a punt returner, but Nebraska has struggled with maybe getting that guy back there to be the good kick returner. And you look at what he did in high school. He was Mr. Minnesota in football, very explosive. Not the biggest guy, but that doesn't matter for this position. I mean, you can be an undersized kind of slot back speed guy. And what I like is he's from Minnesota, so you know he can run in the cold. This is not a speedster coming up here from Miami. This is somebody that's played in a lot of cold weather and is acclimated to what you're going to see here in the Big Ten.
What stands out about him when he's running routes?
I think he's just fast. I mean, he's able to really do things with the ball in his hands and make guys miss in the open field. Very elusive, good hips. Just does all the things that you have to do if you're an undersized type player.
Darian Grimm, listed as a three-star athlete from California. His high school coaches claims he's got a body type that would fit anywhere from a running back to a receiver to somewhere on defense. Where do you see him fitting in with Nebraska?
Well, right now, definitely receiver, and he's another one of those guys with Patrick O'Brien that is here right now for spring ball. And he had a huge season in California, a near state record type year with his receiving yards and receptions. So he's a high volume receiver. He's had a lot of balls thrown his way. He's made a lot of catches, put up a lot of numbers, and I like that because you know he is used to making catches and doing a lot of things with the ball in his hands. And Keith Williams was very high on it. I mean, this is somebody that Nebraska targeted early and locked his commitment up fairly early, and he stayed on board for a long time.
Is he someone we could be seeing as a true freshman?
I think when you look at the receiver position, it's tough because that is the best position right now on Nebraska's roster. I mean, they return all the key guys. DeMornay Pearsonell is going to come back off injury. So I think more than likely, in my opinion, redshirt is probably where he goes, just because you need to kind of build up that reserve for the future.
Jack Stoll, a three-star tight end from Colorado. This is a position the coaching staff likes to use, and in high school he was very versatile, lining up as an H-back, flex receiver, inline tight end. Out of those areas, what's his biggest strength?
Yeah, he's just, you said it, he's an all-around tight end. And I like the fact he's out of Colorado. Nebraska's had good success going in there the last several years, getting top-level talent. And Jack is somebody Nebraska beat head-to-head for Texas. Texas Longhorns won him, and it was really those two teams. I know the CU Buffaloes were in there as well. But this was a win that they needed. The tight end position is very thin going forward when you look at it, so it was imperative they got a quality tight end like Jack Stoll.
How do you see him fitting into Langsdorf's offense?
I think you got glimpses of the tight end spot this year with Seath and Carter, what they want to do, but they want a versatile guy that can block on the edge, can block as a fullback, H-back type, but also catch the ball downfield and make key plays. And I think he does all of those things. Big athletic guy with tons of room to grow.
David Engelhop, a three-star linebacker from Nebraska, yet he'll be playing tight end here. What stands out about him?
David Engelhop was somebody that was a late offer to this class, and Nebraska had really been flirting with him throughout the entire season. He ran a 4.58 40 at Nebraska's summer camp at 6'4", 6'5", 220, 230 pounds in that range. So they've been impressed with him. The problem was they had other guys a little higher on the board, but just the way things shook out, Nebraska was able to come on him later here around signing day and take him away from Wyoming. And you feel bad for a team like Wyoming. They've been on him from the get-go, and they did all the legwork and really built the relationship up. But it's tough to beat the Huskers when they're the in-state team, and that's kind of how that one played out.
Exactly. And are there any recent Nebraska Huskers, or even former ones, that he reminds you of?
Oh, that's a great question when you look at him. The fact that he's so big and athletic, I mean, he can do so many things. He could play DN, he could play linebacker. I don't know if there's one particular guy. I just think in general this year around the state, there were probably 4 or 5 kids that were all 6'4" to 6'5", that were all 220 to 230, that could all run. And that's a really nice year in the state. So Nebraska lost 2 of those guys, Noah Fant to Iowa, and then, they lost Jared Bubach. He's going to Arizona State. So the fact that they were able to get at least another one of those in Engelhop was a good deal.
Brian Brokop, a 3-star offensive guard from Illinois. Do you see him playing guard or somewhere else on the line?
He could play center. When I talked to Brian Brokop after his official visit to Nebraska, he said right now right guard or center are really his 2 spots. He was the highest rated interior offensive lineman in the state of Illinois. I know that's a mouthful to say there, but he's somebody I think that's big, physical, no nonsense, just a tough, Chicago type of guy that, I think will come in here with a real workman-like attitude.
He's 6'5", 278, also wrestles, which seems to be common among linemen. How does that help him on the football field?
Oh, I think it helps with the aggression level, with just how he plays the game and with the point of attack. It helps your leverage, keeps your feet, and just you always hear that. You want your linemen to be wrestlers if you can, because it just helps with so many areas.
And his high school coach said he's always had strength. Now he's becoming more flexible. How is his overall technique?
Well, I think that's one thing for any of these guys. When Coach Kavanaugh gets them, they're going to have to work on those. I mean, there really isn't a lineman that comes in here as a freshman that's the finished product with their technique.
John Raridan, a 4-star offensive lineman from Iowa. He's currently 270. How much more weight will he need to add?
Oh, there's no doubt. He's another guy that falls in that guard, maybe center category, but he'll have to get up to that 300-pound range. But he's a very good athlete that can run, and that's what you like. I mean, I think there's a misconception that all of your linemen in high school need to be 300 pounds, but a lot of times guys don't carry that weight the right way. So I would almost rather see guys in that 270 range where they can build on 30 pounds the right way versus having to reshape 30 pounds of bad weight. So I don't think it's an issue that he's not 300 pounds. I mean, he's somebody that once he gets here in the weight room and develops with a red shirt possibly, he's going to be a really good player as the #1 ranked guy right now coming out of Iowa.
And in an interview he did at the Army Bowl, he said he needs to work on his pass protection. What specific improvements does he need to make?
Well, yeah, that is a big adjustment. I mean, especially for Midwest kids. Not too many teams in the Midwest are big pass pro teams. There's a lot of running teams around this part of the country, and I think for those guys that play in those kinds of offenses, just honing in on that pass protection skill is something a lot of linemen have to do. I mean, the California, Florida kids tend to have a little bit more work in that. Texas too, just because they run more spread and passing offenses where, John is more of a downhill running guy. So I think that will be something he'll have to work on when he gets here.
Bo Wilson, a 3-star offensive lineman from Missouri. He said he could play any position on the offensive line, yet his high school coach said he sees him playing center. Is that where you see him fitting?
Yeah, I think Bo was brought in here to be a center. He's from the same high school as former Husker recruit Monte Harrison. So there is some connection there with Lee Summit West there in Kansas City. And Nebraska really took not a chance, but they went on him fairly early when Bo was somewhat under the radar. I know Louisville and Kansas were the other 2 that came on him, but they just like his toughness. I mean, if you know Mike Cavanaugh, he wants just tough, blue-collar guys that are no-nonsense. And in general, this entire group of offensive linemen fits that profile. All 4 of them, they don't like to do interviews, so from our perspective, when they get down here, it's going to be hard to talk to some of these guys because they're pretty low-key, low-profile, and I think I like the attitude he brings.
Is it difficult transferring from a guard to a center?
It can be, but very few top offensive linemen in high school play center. It's just one of those spots. If you have a Division I guy, he's typically playing tackle or guard. You're not usually putting him at center just because on your line, tackle and guard are much more valuable. So that is something a guy has to adjust to.
Matt Farniok, a 3-star offensive tackle from South Dakota. He had a chance to play in the U.S. Army All-American game and go up against top defensive linemen from across the country. How'd he do?
Well, he played in a lot of high-profile events this year. He was also at the Rivals 5-Star Challenge in Baltimore. So for a kid from Sioux Falls, he was able to go against the best at 2 high-profile events this year, as well as a Rivals camp before that, a Nike camp. So, even though he was in an area without a lot of talent, we did see him go against guys. I think the one area he has to improve on maybe is just that quickness, the ability to be a tackle, to handle the speed rushers. And that's really any offensive lineman. There aren't very many, guys that get tested. And I think that's what happened when Matt went to these places. He definitely got tested by some very talented speed rushers. But there's no doubt, to me, as far as value, he was one of the most important guys they had to get in this recruiting class.
Going off of that, too, he's a guy from the 500-mile radius, committed late. Just how important was he?
Well, I think from the importance standpoint, Nebraska invested maybe as much time, effort, and resources to recruiting Matt Farniak as any guy I've ever seen. I mean, you're talking 5-6 trips in private jets for the staff and to Sioux Falls. He had to come up here at least close to 10 times to visit. They recruited him starting as a freshman in high school, even with the Bo Pelini staff. So just from a pure time perspective, I think he was very important because they just don't produce bodies and guys like Matt Farniak in this part of the country.
Thanks, Sean. We'll catch up with you again later in the show. Coming up next, hear from John Raridan, one of the newest members of the pipeline.
This winter on Time Warner Cable Sports Channel and Nebraska On Demand, Nebraska men's and women's basketball. Coaches Tim Miles and Connie Yorey are looking to take their teams back to the NCAA tournament. Time Warner Cable will take you through all of the Big Ten play and the postseason. Time Warner Cable is your home for full interviews, highlights, and the season in review show. Husker Hoops on Time Warner Cable Sports Channel and Nebraska On Demand. The confetti has settled and a brand new season is on deck.
It's unbelievable what they did!
Your World Series champion Royals now begin their defense of that crown. We'll start getting you ready for spring training as our experts begin to break down the 2016 Royals and what they need to do to repeat as World Series champs. It's an all-new season of Blue Zone. Monday nights at 6:30, only on Time Warner Cable Sports Channel.
If you don't take care of your business, it's going to be a battle. It's going to be a battle.
This is no 6'2" JV guy, is it?
Represent today, you understand me? If I'm not on you, if I'm not yelling at you, it means that I think I'm getting everything that you have inside of you to play the game.
Today, football is the most popular spectator sport. It wasn't when it began.
There was a group of young men in Boston that kind of invented a new game to play.
It was a brutal, brutal kind of game.
There was 18 deaths, over 150 injuries.
It was Wild West. It was crazy.
Lost teeth, broken noses.
Something had to be done.
The sport was in danger.
Welcome back to the 2016 Husker Football Recruiting Show. One offensive lineman committed to play for the Big Red when Bo Pelini was still the coach. Yet the staff changes didn't cause him to waver one bit. I caught up with 4-star offensive lineman John Raridan in December to get his thoughts on playing for Nebraska and more. Well, you received 11 offers. What was it about Nebraska that captured your attention?
Well, they were my first offer, so I was able to spend a lot of time there. And what actually made me commit is I was at a home game one time, and just like the atmosphere when they walked out, I got goosebumps, up and down my arms, and I just realized, that was the place that I wanted to go.
What game was that?
It was the Illinois game.
Okay.
And they won that one.
Okay.
So it was a fun night.
How closely did you follow the Huskers growing up?
Not too closely. I always kind of rooted for him because my dad went there, but my older brother went to Notre Dame, so I kind of grew up going to Notre Dame games and being a Notre Dame fan, so that was kind of my team when I was growing up.
When did Nebraska get on your radar then?
My sophomore year, probably, beginning of the season. Started getting some game invites and stuff from them, and then got an offer later that year.
And you committed to the previous coaching staff.
That's right.
So did any concerns come up when that coaching staff changed?
No, because when I sat down to make my decisions, I tried to exclude the coaching staff as much as I could, because I came to realize that's one of the things that can change while you're there. You know, the facilities, the fan base, and the university itself, you know, those things are all going to stay the same, but you never know what's going to happen to a coaching staff. So I tried to take those other things into consideration more than the coaching staff.
Did you ever consider opening up your recruitment again?
No, not really. No.
And your dad was a Husker, like
That's
you
right.
mentioned. What kind of stories has he told you about his time playing there?
His time, he played from 81 to 84, so I think they lost 3 games in 3 years, and played for 2 national championships. So I mean, he obviously had a lot of fun there, and it's changed. Obviously, it's changed a lot since he's been there. But you know, one thing I can remember is just how devastating it was for him when that game when Nebraska went for 2 against Miami and they lost. I mean, he says that's really one of the only games he really remembers how he felt afterwards.
When did the current coaching staff first contact you?
Pretty much immediately after, like a day or two after they got the job. Coach Kavanaugh called me, just told me that he still wanted me to come and that like my offer was still good there.
What's your relationship like with him?
You know, I got to meet him a couple times. He's a really funny dude, but you can tell he's gets real serious and loves what he does, and I'm just excited to play for him.
What about him has impressed you the most?
Just how refined his technique is. Just, you know, some of the things he's told me, or some of the drills he's suggested to me, they seem like really like nothing I've ever done before. So it just really impresses me how studied he is on his position, and just how much knowledge he has about the techniques.
Well, we introduced you to the newest members of the offense. Now we flip to the other side of the ball. Sean Callahan returns to break down the future black shirts of the 2016 class after the break.
It's the simple things in life, all the little moments that together add up to something spectacular. Slumberland, it's a good life.
Congratulations to Lincoln East High School, this year's winner of the Time Warner Cable Sports Channel Play of the Year contest. In the winning play, quarterback Carson Walters took a vicious hit as he found Josh Makovica inside the 5-yard line. That set up the go-ahead touchdown and East win over Lincoln Southeast. Lincoln East High School will now receive a $1,000 donation from Time Warner Cable Sports Channel. Thanks to everyone who voted in our Play of the Year contest, and congratulations again to the Lincoln East Spartans.
The confetti has settled, and a brand new season is on deck.
It's unbelievable what they did!
Your World Series champion Royals now begin their defense of that crown. We'll start getting you ready for spring training as our experts begin to break down the 2016 Royals and what they need to do to repeat as World Series champs. It's an all-new season of Blue Zone. Monday nights at 6:30, only on Time Warner Cable Sports Channel. College Game Time has moved to Thursdays. Stay up to date with marquee matchups from around the country. Host Kenitra Pulliams and the experts preview and review the big games.
109, 106, and triple overtime.
Get an inside peek at the nation's top athletes and coaches. And we'll spotlight the hottest teams from coast to coast. College Game Time, now Thursdays at 5:30, only on Time Warner Cable Sports Channel.
Welcome back. Sean Callahan's back to break down the defensive side of the ball. Sean, let's start with Ben Stille, a 3-star defensive end from Nebraska. What makes him stand out as a pass rusher?
Well, he's just such a physical kid when you look at Ben. High intensity, high motor. He's a state champion wrestler. He's going to be a 3-time guy probably when it's all said and done. He's in the heavyweight division. Hasn't lost in 2 years. So I think when you look at him, There are so many things that stand out. He's a 4.0, pretty much like a 30 on his ACT. So he's just a no-nonsense, very dialed in, physically gifted athlete, and I think all of those things made him almost a no-brainer for Nebraska to offer.
And he's 6'5", 230, more of a weak side defensive end size. Do you see him putting on more weight to be a strong side DN?
Yeah, I honestly think that's where he'll go. I mean, I think that 230 weight is probably undershooting now. I would say he's probably closer to 250, 260 because he doesn't have to worry about cutting weight. I mean, the whole reason he used to be around that 230 was he was in a weight class below. Now he's in the upper heavyweight class, so he doesn't have to cut the weight. So I don't think weight will be an issue for Ben when he gets here.
Colin Miller, a 3-star defensive end from Indiana. He's from the same high school as Randy Gregory, and their styles of play are somewhat similar. What do they have in common?
Oh yeah, he's just a high motor, high rep speed rusher, and he's listed as a linebacker, but Nebraska will play him at defensive end. He was somebody Nebraska somewhat scrambled to get another defensive end with Ben Stilley, and Colin Miller had a lot of offers. He was higher profile, and Nebraska missed on a number of other players, and they came back to Colin late, even though early on he was interested. And his recruitment really only lasted a few weeks in January, and they were able to get him here for a visit and get his commitment. So in some ways, they really stole him out of the state of Indiana because they didn't invest a ton of time, and I think the Randy Gregory thing played a huge factor in getting him here.
And how important was it to add another pass rusher to the roster?
Oh, they really needed it. I mean, you look at this team and what they struggled at last year. Consistency with running the football on offense, but then pass rushers on defense. Everybody thought the secondary was the issue, but at times they really just couldn't get to the quarterback, and they need more of those types of players.
Sean Alexander, a 3-star linebacker out of New Jersey. He played defensive end in high school. How do you see him transitioning to the linebacker position?
Yeah, he's somebody that will be linebacker, and Trent Bray has been on him really from the get-go in the summer, and he committed to Nebraska back in June, and there were a lot of rocky moments where you thought that he wasn't going to stay committed to Nebraska and was possibly looking around to Rutgers, Pittsburgh, Michigan, a number of programs. But when it was all said and done, I do think that Trent Bray relationship solidified him to Nebraska and locked him up. But I mean, even a week ago, I think there was some thought that he could still be looking around.
Which linebacker spot do you see him playing?
Well, it's hard to say if he's an inside or an outside strong side linebacker. I mean, I think he can play both. Wouldn't surprise me if he's more inside. I think he fits the Big Ten type of linebacker, but he's able to rush the passer, so he has some ability, I think, to do both.
Greg Simmons, a 3-star linebacker from Florida. His high school coach mentioned he figures out plays pretty fast. How important is that at the linebacker position?
Oh, it's really important. You have to have instincts. I mean, go back to Levante David. He wasn't the biggest guy, wasn't the fastest, but he had the instincts and the feel for the game, and that's why he's doing what he's doing in the NFL. You could run fast and have all these other natural gifts, but the instincts are as important as any at the linebacker position. And Greg Simmons came here for summer camp, committed to Nebraska really in June as well, right around the time Sean Alexander did, and was somebody that was solid all the way and was committed, get this, to Miami. Before he went to Nebraska, you got a kid that was from Miami decommit and go to Nebraska. So that was a real big early recruiting score for Mike Riley's staff.
And he describes himself as a team-based energy guy. How important is it to have someone like that for the linebacker corps?
Well, yeah, you want guys that play high energy, kind of rev up the defense. I mean, defense is an emotional part of the game, and I think he fits that profile.
He claims he wants to make an impact right away with the linebacker spot as thin as it is. Do you see that happening? It's
hard. I mean, that is a spot where I think a newcomer could go in there and shake things up. They do return everybody, though, Megan, that played last year. So that would mean he'd have to unseat a veteran that saw a lot of playing time.
Pernell Jefferson, a 3-star outside linebacker from Louisiana. He's going to be learning all 3 linebacker spots. Which spot do you see him excelling at the most?
I think this comes down to what happens when he gets here and how he develops. He was somebody, that he was committed to Oklahoma for a long time, and Oklahoma had to kind of make a move on him and just say, hey, you know what, we're still recruiting maybe a 5-star linebacker for your spot. So that opened the door for Nebraska to get involved with Pernell and get him. Indiana was a team that tried to come in late, but it was kind of one of those guys that fell in their lap. I mean, usually you don't get an Oklahoma recruited commit to kind of come to you as easy as it did, but it all worked out.
And Nebraska's really seemed to open a pipeline to Louisiana with, Stanley Morgan and Tyrion Ferguson was his host. How important is that?
It's real important. I mean, I think you have to make sure that the right kind of kid, though, someone that culturally fits here, because we have seen others from Louisiana come here and not last very long. Glenn Irons and Dry Tolbert ring a bell.
Right.
They were here for less than a year and they left. So when you find these guys, you want to make sure they're also cultural fits to Nebraska.
And he described some of his strengths as quickness and reading the blocks and the line and blitzing. Do you agree with that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think he's somebody that can really do all of those things and brings that speed. I mean, anytime you bring players down from that part of the country, usually speed is what comes with them.
JoJo Domann, a three-star outside linebacker from Colorado, recently played in the Semper Fidelis All-American Bowl game. He's been a little underrated in this class. However, he recorded 34 tackles, a pick six. His high school coach said he has the natural ability, it just needs to be polished.
Yeah, you look at JoJo, and he's one of my favorite guys in the class. I think he's the one that not very many people are talking about, but down the road could be very valuable. He was the Colorado High School Player of the Year this year. The previous year, he was the Colorado Defensive Player of the Year. So he's a guy that has really proven it the last 2 seasons. Was very high in Nebraska. He's great friends with Eric Lee and Avery Anderson. That played a factor. His father is also a big-time sports agent down there in Colorado, represents a lot of pro athletes. So he's been around the game, understands the level here, and I think Nebraska, when you look at him, he could play linebacker or safety. They've recruited him, Megan, as a defensive athlete.
Okay. He led his high school team in interceptions, being described as a huge playmaker for them. What else do Husker fans need to know about him?
His instincts. He's able just to have such a feel for the game. And, I've had another college coach from another school say he's someone that he goes, I wouldn't be surprised if he's a captain at Nebraska. He just really is a locker room, great team player, well respected, and just plays the game the way the game should be played.
Markel Dismuke, a 4-star safety from California. He's 6'1", 180, has the length. What else stands about him?
He's a big-time player out of California, and we've talked a lot about in recruiting Keyshawn Johnson's connection to Nebraska. Well, Markel is connected as well to that group of kids with Keyshawn Johnson out there in California, and I think that played a huge factor in getting him to visit Nebraska and then commit to Nebraska. And he was somebody that was very low profile, quiet in the process, didn't do a lot of interviews, not a big knee guy, but one of the top defensive backs in California. This is a huge steal for Nebraska to get him out of the state. He was committed to Cal for a real long time, and to pull a 4-star LA kid like this as a DB, there's no doubt he'll have a chance to get on the field.
And by getting him here, how does that just help open the doors for Keyshawn Johnson Jr. and Darnay Holmes to get here?
I think it just lays the groundwork. Now, when those guys visit here again, they're going to have someone to hang with, visit with more, and hear more about it. Tristan Gebbia, the quarterback as well, is a part of that group. It's really the making of potentially something special. You don't want to get too far ahead of yourself, but I think you have to like the direction of where things have gone with these Calabasas, California kids, and Keyshawn Jr. Could be the next one that could go, and Darnay Holmes being a 5-star as well. If you get Keyshawn and you got Markel, you never know what could happen to a guy like Darnay Holmes.
DiCaprio Boodle, a 3-star cornerback from Miami, Florida. He's fast, also a sprinter in track. He can pretty much keep up with any receiver he covers.
Yeah, he was somebody that Nebraska discovered, Megan, at their satellite football camp. Lots of talk about satellite camps and what they meant around college football. Well, this was really the only guy Nebraska pulled out of all those camps. But he ran the fastest 40 out of like 450 kids at the Miami satellite camp they ran down there at Doral City Park. And he's somebody that immediately caught their attention. Then they found out more. And get this, his brother played football for Nebraska Omaha when they used to have football. So the family had connections to Nebraska. They are very familiar with the state here. So it was almost too good to be true, really, how it all came together.
And other than him being fast, what else stands out about him?
The speed is the #1 thing when you go down to Miami, and that's typically what you're looking for. But just an explosive athlete that could really do a lot of things. I think he could be a good special teams player as well. But also a low-key guy. There's a lot of guys in this class that really weren't about the spotlight. They weren't about the headlines. And, he's one of those players I think that fits that profile as well.
Tony Butler, a three-star defensive back from Ohio. He's described as a versatile cornerback, also has length and ball skill to play safety. Which position do you see him playing at Nebraska?
Well, Nebraska will start Tony Butler out as a corner, but he could easily play safety. You know, at St. Edward's in Cleveland there, it's a powerhouse program. They've won the state title in the highest class 3 straight years. A year ago, he was on a team that had 3 4-star guys in the secondary with him. And all those players were, at places like Notre Dame and Michigan State this past season. So he's been around and played around the best over his high school career. And I love his size. He's a legitimate 6'2", just a big physical guy. And if you know Brian Stewart, that's what he wants. Brian Stewart was formerly with the Dallas Cowboys. He loves those big physical corners. And I think that's why he wants Tony Butler to try out corner first.
And since he did play against guys going to Ohio State and Michigan State in high school, what kind of advantage does that give him?
Well, just being on a team with all those guys, being in the same secondary, he just got better. It makes you better. Competition makes you better. And I think being around the best, playing at the highest level in Ohio, all things that really jump out to me about Tony Butler.
Lamar Jackson, a 4-star safety from California. He thinks he'll have a chance to make an early contribution to the team. Do you see that as a likely possibility?
There's no doubt. I mean, he is the highest ranked guy in this class when you look at Lamar Jackson. We rank him at Rivals.com as the nation's #1 safety, but he would probably start out here as a corner as well. They did a lot of legwork to get him, and he was at that Michigan State football game. They really picked the best time to have him on campus to showcase what Nebraska was all about, and to hold off Arizona State and USC and Oregon. This is about as big of a recruiting victory, I think, for Nebraska in the class.
And he's very physical. What will his presence bring to that secondary?
That was something I think that was missing at times this year. I don't want to call names out of players, but they just weren't. They didn't have very good ball skills, and the physicality lacked at times in the back end. So I think when you bring in guys like Lamar and Tony and this group, it's a very impressive secondary class.
And watching his film, there's a lot of clips where he's a very mobile quarterback on offense. He looks pretty comfortable. How do you see him transitioning to the defensive back?
He's an athlete, and I think the fact that he plays quarterback just shows you how intelligent he is, how good of a feel he has for the game of football, and there's no doubt he'll transition just fine to defense.
Caleb Lightburn, a kicker from Washington State. What about Lightburn caught Bruce Reed's attention?
His leg strength. This is somebody that Nebraska had been recruiting really since the staff was at Oregon State. Bruce Reed really was on him as well at Oregon State, and he's not necessarily a field goal kicker. He's going to come in and probably redshirt under Sam Foltz, learn under Sam Foltz, and be the punter, but also handle kickoffs. He has a very, very strong leg, and Bruce Reed thinks he's one of the better punting prospects in all of America.
All right, thanks, Sean. We'll get your final thoughts on this year's recruiting class a little later on, but first we sit down with the Director of Football and Recruiting Operations to get an inside look at what went into the recruiting process over the past year.
College Game Time has moved to Thursdays. Stay up to date with marquee matchups from around the country. Host Kenitra Pulliams and the experts preview and review the big games.
109, 106, in triple overtime.
Get an inside peek at the nation's top athletes and coaches. And we'll spotlight the hottest teams from coast to coast. College Game Time. Now Thursdays at 5:30. Only on Time Warner Cable Sports Channel. This winter on Time Warner Cable Sports Channel and Nebraska On Demand. Nebraska men's and women's basketball. Coaches Tim Miles and Connie Yorey are looking to take their teams back to the NCAA tournament. Time Warner Cable will take you through all of the Big Ten play and the postseason. Time Warner Cable is your home for full interviews, highlights, and the season in review show. Husker Hoops on Time Warner Cable Sports Channel and Nebraska On Demand.
If you don't take care of your business, it's going to be a battle. It's going to be a battle.
This is no 6'2" JV guy, is it?
Represent today, you understand me? If I'm not on you, if I'm not yelling at you, it means that I think I'm getting everything that you have inside of you to play the game.
Today, football is the most popular spectator sport. It wasn't when it began.
There was a group of young men in Boston that kind of invented a new game to play.
It was a brutal, brutal kind of game.
There was 18 deaths, over 150 injuries.
It was Wild West. It was crazy.
Lost teeth, broken noses.
Something had to be done.
The sport was in danger.
Welcome back. I'm now joined by Andy Vaughn, who is the Director of Football and Recruiting Operations with the Huskers. Thanks for being here today, Andy.
Absolutely. Glad to be here.
Well, last year it was kind of a hit-the-ground-running approach when you guys came in. Now you guys have had a full year. How has just having that full year been helping with the recruiting process?
It's been great. You know, last year we came in at the last minute, like you said, and had to put together the class with some commitments that were already here, and then also putting together some new names into that hat. There's a lot of fluctuation of guys decommitting. We had to find new prospects. So that was just basically just a fight to the finish. This year it's been great. We've had more time to put in our systems in place, find the right guys that we think fit our system a lot better, build those relationships so you're not scrambling at the last minute. So it's been really good. It's been smooth. You know, we can always find ways to improve, but I think overall it's been a great first year on the recruiting trail.
Did you guys change any techniques from last year to this year?
I don't think really change techniques. It's just you have more time to put your process into place. You know, as soon as we sign this class today, we'll start all over again. We've already kind of started in the last few days as the coaches have come off the road on Friday, just calling and getting those offers out for the next 2 years for those guys that they may have seen or picked up information on while they're out recruiting. So we're really just already started on the 17 class, but it gives you more time to get your process, watch that extra film that you don't get when you're coming in January and trying to put together a signing class. So it's been really good. So nothing really different. You just get the full year to put your system in place. So hopefully these guys fit a lot better and things will work out good. So.
And looking at the linebacker spot, you guys weren't given the best position coming in. Now you guys have 10 guys on scholarship at that position. How are you feeling about it now?
I think that's really a credit to Coach Trent Bray, the work he's done on the recruiting trail. He really helped coach those guys up coming into this season. I think the results on the field speak for themselves. And then he's a hard worker on the recruiting trail. Nobody is going to outwork that guy when it comes to finding players. And he's really taken that group on and has done a great job of finding guys that he thinks fits with his system and he can put into place, and I think that's something that's really a bright spot in his spot.
And there's no JUCO guys on the roster at the moment. Why is that?
I think that, again, that just goes back to a need-based thing. You know, we identified some guys in the process that we thought could help us from the junior college route. Those didn't work out, but it's not something we're avoiding at all. It's just something that just in this cycle, it didn't take place for whatever reason. So. And
looking at this year's class, you found DiCaprio Boodle from a satellite camp. How important are those to you guys?
I think that's great for us. You know, there's a big controversy about whether we should or shouldn't do those, but I think it really disenfranchises the prospects that maybe don't have the funds to fly to Nebraska. You know, a lot of the areas that we recruit are, let's face it, a long ways from Lincoln, Nebraska, so we have to go to where they are. And I think that gives us an advantage. Instead of just watching film, you can actually go work out a guy. You can see how his personality is. You can see how well he takes coaching. So for us, I think it's only a bonus, and I think we'll try to explore that more in the future.
And last year there weren't anyone in the Big Ten footprint. This year you guys have 7. What changed with that? Was it just more time building those contacts in the area?
From the previous recruiting class?
Right.
I think it was, yeah. Obviously having the year under our belt, it gives you more time to identify. Coming in January last year, to find the names quickly, sometimes you have to go with the previous relationships that the staff brings with them. So I think that was some of the reason we had guys in different places in last year's class. This year, we've been here, we're identified guys in our areas that we can recruit. I think that's why you see it take more of a different approach this year.
Great. Well, thanks so much for being here, Andy. Coming up after the break, head coach Mike Riley comments on National Signing Day.
It's the simple things in life, all the little moments that together add up to something spectacular. Slumberland, it's a good life.
The confetti has settled and a brand new season is on deck.
It's unbelievable what they did!
Your World Series champion Royals now begin their defense of that crown. We'll start getting you ready for spring training as our experts begin to break down the 2016 Royals and what they need to do to repeat as World Series champs. It's an all-new season of Blue Zone. Monday nights at 6:30, only on Time Warner Cable Sports Channel.
Today, football is the most popular spectator sport. It wasn't when it began.
There was a group of young men in Boston that kind of invented a new game to play.
It was a brutal, brutal kind of game.
There was 18 deaths, over 150 injuries.
It was Wild West. It was crazy.
Lost teeth, broken noses.
Something had to be done.
The sport was in danger.
College Game Time has moved to Thursdays. Stay up to date with marquee matchups from around the country. Host Kenitra Williams and the experts preview and review the big games.
109, 106 in triple overtime.
Get an inside peek at the nation's top athletes and coaches. And we'll spotlight the hottest teams from coast to coast. College Game Time. Now Thursdays at 5:30. Only on Time Warner Cable Sports Channel.
Welcome back. With National Signing Day in the books, head coach Mike Riley met with the media to recap this year's recruiting class.
Welcome. It's good to see everybody. I think this is like the fifth day in the last 25 that I've spent in Lincoln, so it's good to be back, and it's great to be back on this day in particular. It's a big day for Nebraska and exciting day for Nebraska football. So, we went through the day in one good way. We had no real surprises. Everybody that was supposed to sign, we thought was going to sign, they did. And we've got a pretty versatile class here, I suppose, is one way to look at it. As you recruit and as you put your plan together, one of the plans is always to get the right person and the right football talent. You got to start with that, and that's always a big part of it. Another part of that is trying to fit the needs of your football team, and going through a year with the team, you're looking at the number of players at each position. And what you would like ideally, as 12 linebackers, that are on your team, something like that. You're trying to hit those spots, and sometimes you don't want to do that. If it's a big number you've got to get to, you don't necessarily want to do all of it in 1 year with all those kids in the same class. So, like at linebacker, we got 3 more guys, and we still want to build that number up. And we're getting closer to it, so we're excited about that. We graduated more starters in the offensive line than any other position, so we're going to, we got 4 offensive linemen. That's a good deal. We've got some receivers that are going to continue to grow and help us, so we just about hit all the positions that way. We're getting closer to having the right number at each position as we go along, and we feel like we got good players and the right people for this university and this state. So it's exciting. We're good. We've got another little news you may have already heard. Lane Hovey is going to transfer to Montana. I hate to lose Lane. Wonderful, great young man, a really good football player. And is making a decision, for him to find more opportunity to play. He play for us and get in the games, but maybe looking for a little more opportunity to play. And I get that totally, but like I say, we just wish him the best because he's a great, great young man, and he'll always be a Nebraska football alum. He'll be connected with us. Joe Keels has found a play. He's got a 6th year. He's going to play at Eastern Michigan. Trey Mosley is transferred to Central Arkansas. I think you already know that. Adrian Talon has left the program. We think he's going to end up in a junior college at this time. And then we've got our class. So you guys want to start asking questions? I think it's a good time.
Mike, can you talk about Patrick O'Brien? What impressed you about him as a quarterback and having him enroll early here at Nebraska?
Well, the first thing that impressed me about Patrick O'Brien was seeing him throw the ball on tape. I think in general, the first thing you're drawn to is talent, and you know, so we had some good video on him last spring sometime, and we liked it. So when we were able to go out and go through the evaluation time during the spring, that was one of Danny Langsdorff's first stops, because we've kind of had a general rule through the years, personal rule, that we will not offer a quarterback until we see him throw live.
Coming up, Sean Callahan is back to share his final thoughts on the latest additions to the Big Red.
This winter on Time Warner Cable Sports Channel and Nebraska On Demand, Nebraska men's and women's basketball. Coaches Tim Miles and Connie York are looking to take their teams back to the NCAA tournament. Time Warner Cable will take you through all of the Big Ten play and the postseason. Time Warner Cable is your home for full interviews, highlights, and the season in review show. Husker Hoops on Time Warner Cable Sports Channel and Nebraska On Demand.
If you don't take care of your business, it's going to be a battle. It's going to be a battle.
This is no 6'2 JV guy, is it?
Represent today, you understand me? If I'm not on you, if I'm not yelling at you, it means that I think I'm getting everything that you have inside of you to play the game.
Make some noise!
Congratulations to Lincoln East High School, this year's winner of the Time Warner Cable Sports Channel Play of the Year contest. In the winning play, quarterback Carson Walters took a vicious hit as he found Josh Makovica inside the 5-yard line. That set up the go-ahead touchdown and East win over Lincoln Southeast. Lincoln East High School will now receive a $1,000 donation from Time Warner Cable Sports Channel. Thanks to everyone who voted in our Play of the Year contest, and congratulations again to the Lincoln East Spartans.
The confetti has settled, and a brand new season is on deck.
It's unbelievable what they did!
Your World Series champion Royals now begin their defense of that crown. We'll start getting you ready for spring training as our experts begin to break down the 2016 Royals and what they need to do to repeat as World Series champs. It's an all-new season of Blue Zone. Monday nights at 6:30, only on Time Warner Cable Sports Channel.
Welcome back. Sean, let's get your final take on this year's class. Let's start out. If you had to give them a grade, what would it be?
You know, I think somewhere in that B+ neighborhood. I mean, I'm a tough guy to give out an A for recruiting, but I do think when you look at what they did in this class, they filled a lot of key needs. The quarterback position was huge with O'Brien and the bonus guy of Tanner Lee for the future. You know, they got the receivers, a really good group of receivers, a really good group of offensive linemen. I still feel on defense they did come up short in that defensive line area, you know, getting that maybe junior college immediate impact type guy. So I you know, it was a good class. It had a lot to it, but you know, obviously still some things to be desired.
And speaking of the junior college guy, that's his unique roster because there's no junior college guys on there. Why do you think that is? You
know, that is a heck of a stat you came up with because I didn't even know that, but you're right. I mean, this is probably the first time in 20-plus years Nebraska has not had a junior college player on their roster. Now, scholarship player. There's a couple walk-ons, but it is significant. And, you know, I think that is something that hopefully will change because ideally, you know, you want to get 2 to 3 high-profile, immediate impact JUCO guys a year because you look at the history. Those have been Nebraska's top NFL prospects when you look at the last several drafts.
Right. And you also mentioned Tanner Lee. He can't play this fall, but how do you see that impacting the 2017 race for quarterback?
Well, he's a veteran, and that's what the staff wanted. You know, they're fine for this year. You have Tommy Armstrong, Riker Fife, and then Patrick O'Brien. But for 2017, all you have right now is O'Brien, Darlington, and A.J. Bush. So you don't really have a lot to go off of. And I don't think there's a lot of confidence that Darlington and Bush are going to be contending for a starting job. So they wanted another veteran arm in there with O'Brien, and that's what Tanner Lee is. He's a guy that has started 19 games. He's thrown for 3,600 yards. Keith Williams, Nebraska's receivers coach, coached him as well at Tulane. So there's a lot of familiarity with him, and I think he'll really help this team for the future.
And when the coaching staff arrived last year, they were very thin at linebackers. Now they have 10 scholarships on the roster. How has that helped?
Well, they're getting close. You know, Mark Banker told me year one when he got here they should have 12. So you're not going to go from 4 to 12 overnight, because they were at 4 when they first got here. But they've kind of built that thing up brick by brick. They've gotten some good contributions as well from like a walk-on like Chris Weber. But I do think that will still be another area next year where they'll take 2 to 3 and just kind of keep building this linebacker position to where it needs to be to play this defense, and also special teams. That is the one thing people don't put into the equation. You need a lot of linebackers to cover kicks and punts. Nebraska was using running backs like Adam Taylor and Graham Nabity, Andy Janovich, guys like that to make tackles, and usually you'd have linebackers there. So I think the linebackers will also help in that area going forward.
And how would you say the staff did balancing out the 500-mile radius? I
think that is probably one of the things that stands out to me about this class. The in-state recruiting, there wasn't a lot to it this year. I'm a guy that would like to see 4 to 5 in-state guys a year, because I have a strong amount of respect for the kids and coaches in the state, but I understand there's not always going to be 4 to 5 guys. But what they did do was cherry-picked around. You get Matt Farniak, the top guy in South Dakota. You get John Reardon out of Iowa, #1 guy in Iowa. You get the best running back in St. Louis and Trey Bryant. 2 really good Colorado players. A couple kids from Kansas. So I do like the makeup of what they did in the bordering states, and that's kind of what you have to do, Megan, I think, to have success here in Nebraska.
And this year's recruiting class has a lot more kids from the Big Ten footprint. How do you think that helps?
Well, there's an old saying, kids want to go somewhere to school where they can get home in a car ride, and I think that is important. You want guys that are within 8 hours of Lincoln, just because history tells you, if you're closer to home, it's usually a better long-term fit, because who can afford to always just buy plane tickets to fly to California or Florida or Texas? Yeah, you want some of those guys, but you don't want the base of your team. So they talked about this last year, emphasizing the bordering areas, and they really did a good job of executing that plan, I thought.
Great. Well, thanks so much for being here, Sean. That's going to wrap up the 2016 Husker Football Recruiting Show on Time Warner Cable Sports Channel. We'll see you next time.
The simple things in life, all the little moments that together add up to something spectacular. Slumberland, it's a good life.
College Game Time has moved to Thursdays. Stay up to date with marquee matchups from around the country. Host Kenitra Williams and the experts preview and review the big games.
109, 106 in triple overtime.
Get an inside peek at the nation's top athletes and coaches, and we'll spotlight the hottest teams from coast to coast. College Game Time, now Thursdays at 5:30, only on Time Warner Cable Sports Channel. The confetti has settled, and a brand new season is on deck.
It's unbelievable what they did!
Your World Series champion Royals now begin their defense of that crown. We'll start getting you ready for spring training as our experts begin to break down the 2016 Royals and what they need to do to repeat as World Series champs. It's an all-new season of Blue Zone. Monday nights at 6:30, only on Time Warner Cable Sports Channel.
Today, football is the most popular spectator sport. It wasn't when it began.
There was a group of young men in Boston that kind of invented a new game to play.
It was a brutal, brutal kind of game.
There was 18 deaths, over 150 injuries.
It was Wild West. It was crazy.
Lost teeth, broken noses.
Something had to be done.
The sport was in danger.